Another senator we spoke with in Washington, D.C. is Senator Tina Smith. Now, Senator Tina Smith from Minnesota, directly connected to and affected by the political assassinations that took place. So we spoke to her about that, legislative priorities, and what is even possible when you are trying to negotiate with a Republican Party that's increasingly extreme and disconnected from reality. Let's check it out.
So, in the wake of the tragedy in your state with your friend, the person you knew, I just want to kind of ask a question about how it's been for you and your colleagues working in this environment with Republicans who are as callous as some.
Yeah.
The world saw the photos of you in the hallway with Mike Lee. The world saw his tweets and the callousness of it. How are you approaching day to day working with these people?
Well, I mean, honestly, it's a bit of a mixed bag. I mean, I have had many colleagues, including some of my Republican colleagues, come up to me privately and say, express, condolences in a very real and human way. And that's what it should be like, right? We can have our disagreements, and we have big disagreements, but we ought to be able to stay in touch with our humanity when something really horrible like this happens. And I've even had some people who come up to me and kind of privately done a little fist bump, like, I'm glad you did what you did on the Republican side. Of course, it would be better if they did that publicly, because I think that part of what happened with Senator Lee and me is that I needed him to hear from me directly how his words affected me and the people that I love and care about in Minnesota. That it wasn't going to be like another Twitter battle. It was going to be like, I'm a real person, and I need you to understand the impact of your words. And I think that's honestly what we need more of as we try to maintain our humanity in this incredibly difficult time. And when people are literally getting threats on their lives,
It seems that at one point the spectrum was sort of, we disagree about what the top tax rate should be, to things like, I don't think two men should be legally allowed to get married. And they felt palpably different, right? We now have the spectrum is out the window where it's, I think my political opponents should be killed, which feels so far from any kind of substantive or productive political disagreement that I just wonder your view as to whether, has it gotten to a point where there are some that are so far outside the mainstream that you can't meaningfully have discourse anymore?
I mean, I struggle with that because, how do you have if you're going to try to get something done with somebody, you might disagree on 98%, but you've got to have a level of trust on the 2%. And it's a struggle to figure out how do you have any level of trust with somebody who is, pushing blatantly false conspiracy theories, who is, like literally making a joke out of the death of somebody that you care about. I really struggled with this after January 6th, and I saw, some of the Republicans in the Senate vote not to certify the election. And I'm like, how can I actually do business with somebody who can't even acknowledge that Joe Biden is the lawfully elected president of the United States? So I continue to struggle with it. But I also, I look for places, I always look for places where I can find some level of, for example, if I can work with one of my colleagues on something that's going to benefit a tribal nation in Minnesota because they have tribes in their state and we can find a way of actually accomplishing something, then I'm going to take that opportunity.
Right.
Because I sort of feel like that's my job.
Do you feel like you showing up and the confrontation that happened? We need more confrontations. I don't know if you get the vibe. More of a confrontational kind of fella. Do you think that it has motivated your colleagues to this is the way forward? We need more of this, because I believe we need more of this.
I totally agree with you. I hope so. And I think, in the Senate, we have a tendency in politics, we talk about one another through other people. We engage in these sort of proxy wars with one another rather than going to it. And that's what I wanted to do with Senator Lee. I wanted him to hear from me directly. I didn't want it to be sort of in a back-asswards way through somebody else. And I think that's one of the reasons why people responded to it so much, because it felt like in some ways I was saying to him what a lot of other people wanted to say to him, and they could see it. And I totally agree with you. And conflict, I mean, if conflict is handled in a respectful way, or where you're treating somebody with dignity, even if you're like truly confronting them on what you think is screwed up about what they're doing, I mean that's like something that you need to know how to do in a democracy. And don't you feel like sometimes we've kind of forgotten how to do that?
Some of us have forgotten how to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't name any names.
Yeah.
Mike Lee, Ted Cruz, I could go on
Yeah.
and on. But I mean, your partners in governance have abdicated their role as a constitutionally co-equal branch of government to cede that power to Donald Trump. And you don't have a partner in governance right now.
That's true.
Who's a part of the other party.
And I mean, at the very least, standing up for the prerogatives of the United States Senate and the responsibilities that we have been, authorized to hold in our Constitution. And when you have that, plus you have their just willingness to spout all sorts of things that I've got to believe they know are just not true. And then you've really undermined like the ability that we should have as a democracy to actually do our jobs. And it's bad.
What's your sense of when it comes to, I mean, we could talk about the tax bill because it's sort of like front and center, but I think bigger picture, one of the things my audience always asks about is the behind the scenes of getting these bills to the point where the vote happens and the sort of posturing and negotiating that happens between the parties. Is it collegial, sort of the way that, sometimes the two clients of lawyers are very much at odds?
Yeah.
But for the lawyers, it's sort of like, this is our job. It's not contentious in the way that it might be between the clients and the dispute. If we analogize that to the behind the scenes of what happens in the Senate, how do you bridge the gap on some of these fundamental disagreements with something as big as like a tax bill?
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, it can be that way. You can have that, like, we agree, but we're just trying to get the best for our clients, get the best for our constituents. And those negotiations can happen. And, anytime you have a negotiation, you're looking for that, on a Venn diagram, you're looking for the place where the interests overlap, and you're trying to maximize that overlap. And I think you can see that happening on legislation. Not happening now. I mean, let's be really clear, because the Republicans are negotiating with themselves, and the Democrats have been pushed out. We have no say in what they're going to do. What we do have, as my friend Elizabeth Warren says, we might not be in power, but we are not powerless. And so we are using the power that we have to shine a light on what it is that they are doing, on helping to mobilize the opposition, on drawing attention to the terrible things that this bill will do. So we're using all of the power that we have. But in this moment, we're not being negotiated with, because they don't want our votes. They're going to do it on their own. And that's why it's going to end up being so terrible for so many Americans.
What can we, as Americans, do? I mean, obviously you have a privileged position being in power. What can regular people and, random dum-dums on YouTube, I'll speak for myself,
Please.
What can we do from a messaging standpoint to move the needle? I mean, I don't think they are capable of shame. You lack dignity and you act like a ghoul. It just, some rules don't apply. But what message would you have to our audiences about what can we do?
Well, so I think first it's important to understand that Donald Trump's whole strategy, the strategy of these Republicans, is to try to convince us that we don't have any power, that our voices don't matter, that we might as well just give up and go home and not pay any attention because they're going to be the deciders. And so the first thing is to really resist that and to just not let them take our power away. Whether you're a United States senator or whether you're, a grandma holding up a sign over a freeway on Thursdays saying that, you don't believe in kings. And I think that is everybody can do something. It might be big or it might be small. Even the smallest thing makes a difference. I really believe that. I'm an organizer. I believe in the power of the grassroots to change things. And I believe that change is going to come to Washington. It's not going to come from Washington. And if you believe that, then you just do the things that you can do. You show up for it. I also just think that the thing that gives me faith in this moment is, they may well succeed in passing this big beautiful, horrible bill. But like the thing that gives me faith is that when people know about it, they think it's terrible. This is not what they voted for. If they voted for Donald Trump, and it sure as hell not what they want to see happen to their communities under any set of circumstances. People didn't vote to, take away people's support for their disabled children. They didn't vote to take away nutrition programs from kids and moms. That's not what they want. And so our challenge is to just get the word out and help people to understand what's happening, and then, get them mobilized and activated. And that's actually what I think truly is what's so important about what you all are doing, because most folks aren't like tuning into the NBC Nightly News. No offense to NBC.
Maybe a little.
Yeah. I'm not judging here. I'm just saying that's not where most people are going to find out what's happening. They're going to people whose opinions they trust to tell them. And that's why I think, I'm not trying to suck up to you, but I think that's actually why what you're doing is important.
Well, on that note, and I know you've got to run soon, one of the things that worries me about that we've got to tell people what's going on is if you go back to the Obamacare days, Obamacare included the state Medicaid expansion, which states could opt to do or not to do. And some red state governors didn't do it. And then when it came to November of 2012 and that election, you had people in some of these red states who never got their health care, and they blamed Barack Obama. They didn't blame their governor who said, we're not participating in that expansion. How do we deal with that?
Yeah, in just this past election, we had some people who knew that abortion rights had been taken away from them in their states, and they knew that happened when Joe Biden was president, so they figured it was Joe Biden's fault, even though it was the fault of the Trump Supreme Court. Yeah. And so, there's no easy answer to that, as you well know. We have to, and I always hate it when people call folks that are like, low information voters, because most people are just really busy trying to figure out how to make their lives work and don't have time to pay a lot of attention to what we're doing here in Washington or what's happening in their state house. But then there are moments where you see like really strong, exciting leaders who show up and are able to communicate and are talking about like delivering real change for people, and those folks are breaking through. I think, I've been following the New York mayor's race super closely, but I think in a way we saw that a little bit yesterday. Somebody who was like strong, compelling, was talking about the issues that matter in people's lives, and he really broke through. So
you showed up today, and when you confronted Mike Lee, so we appreciate it very much.
Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thanks for talking to me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
We'll do it again.